Okay, so I think I should make a start now. So good morning, everybody. Welcome. Thanks so much for joining us this morning. Hope you all are doing well and having a great week so far. And for those first timers, welcome to your very first Connections Cafe. So just to introduce myself, my name is Sarah Wong. I'm the SME Development Manager working in the London office at the Connected Place Catapult. So I work with Alex Whedon in the SME development team. And especially for those first timers, this Connections Cafe, just to give you a brief of what it's about. This event is a part of our regular series that look to explore latest development and opportunities in advanced urban and innovation sectors. So we usually run these as informal breakfast mornings, which we cater, but I'm afraid on this occasion it's going to be BYOB, so bring your own breakfast and coffee as well. And the theme around this Connections Cafe today is about innovation in the built environment, a quick snapshot. So we'll be having some fantastic speakers today, talking about challenges and opportunities where industries, key stakeholders and thought leaders can tackle innovation and value creating ways. So as you all know, we can't really ignore the pink elephant in the room. We're still going through this pandemic world. So for many of us, it hasn't been easy. But as you know, as a Catapult, we're still here for you. We want to still support businesses to navigate through new regulations. We want to give as much updates as possible. And, we're still wanting to support our network of businesses to encourage networking. So we hope that these events like these can help support each other further. So let's go through the agenda for today. So just so you know, the event will likely end earlier today at approximately maybe 10 past 11, quarter past, because unfortunately we've had a few speakers pulling out today. So sending their apology on their behalf as well. But we have 7 speakers in total, so I'm just going to introduce them in order. First of all, we've got our very own Annalise Johns, our housing team lead from Connected Places Catapult, who will be doing an opening about what we're doing in the sector at Catapult and how we can work better with businesses in housing. And then next up, we've got Jessie Wild from Bristol Housing Festival, and she'll be talking about what Bristol is doing in innovation and built environment and in their initiatives. And then we've got 3 SMEs. We've got Haggard from Bowtie Construction, we've got Oksana from Biome, and we've got Suja from Houndstooth Wireless. They'll all be showcasing their innovative businesses and what they're doing in this space. And then last but not least, we've got Zed, a startup strategy advisor. So she's had years and years of experience working as a VC for the built environment industry. So she'll be sharing her knowledge in this space. So just a few things about kind of housekeeping and IT, just so you know, this session is recorded and it's streaming live on YouTube as well. During the session, your video and microphone will be turned off. So if you want to ask any questions to the speakers, I advise you please do it as and when the presentations are happening. So you can use the chat function, which is located at the bottom of the screen on your panel. We'll then have 1-minute Q&A session after each speaker. So hopefully we can answer as many questions as possible. But if not, we also have a panel Q&A session right before we close off the event as well, where I'll be bringing back all the speakers. So you'll have plenty of opportunities to ask questions. Also, after every speaker's Q&A, we'll also put up a poll. So we'll be welcoming anyone who wants to meet up and follow up with any of the speakers. You'll have the opportunity to do so. And then what's going to happen is after this event, I'll then do email introductions individually. So, So without further ado, I'll introduce our first speaker, Annalise Johns, who will be talking about some really incredible and interesting initiatives and her ideas in the housing space and how we can better work with our business network. Annalise, over to you.
Unmute. Hi, start again. So thank you, Sarah. That's super, and thanks for asking me to join. This is a really great opportunity for everyone. I think disruptions are always an opportunity that reveals both weaknesses, but also strengths. And I'm hoping I can share some of my observations on where those are coming to light. Amid the climate emergency, the COVID, the Brexit, all of it, I think it's really shaking up the built environment industry and creating some incredible opportunities. So today I'm going to just look at a quick overview where those, where the challenges are, but also where there's scope for us to really build our industry. The Center for Digitally Built Britain has just produced a really interesting report, and this quote, "We have created an amazing, complex machine on which we wholly depend. Without it, our lives would be immeasurably worse. Society would not survive. That machine is infrastructure. Our built environment, a platform for human flourishing." I highly recommend reading this report. It's quite thought-provoking and a good place to start. I'm really going to explore my purpose is how we're future fit. This FT quote has basically identified how we've really made no progress, and that's got nothing to do with coronavirus. So this really is an opportunity to build on this disruption. And it's really about transforming our perceptions and seeing these, what could be hurdles, as true opportunities. And I wanted to also just start with my definition of the built environment, because I see it as sort of a web of indoor spaces and networks of mobility imposed within the natural environment, producing a delicate balance between growth and resilience. And that's definitely come to fruition as we are entering this climate emergency. And so being future fit means we need to be prepared, aware, and connected. And so going forward, we need to identify what this disruption is revealing and how we can work with that. So these are three areas where I have basically identified opportunities. Multi-generational homes truly are an opportunity. We've seen 2018, 26% of a 26% increase in the demand for multi-generational homes. We're seeing a greater demand on having to provide care at home. We're seeing more people staying at home, but also through this COVID, I've noticed an exacerbation of people's illnesses within their home because of their home not functioning. But also I've seen marriages break up, relationships disintegrate because our homes are really not supporting the function that it should be providing. And so I see this really as an opportunity. I see this as basically the market for home adaptation has basically arrived. It's not about just retrofitting our homes for a carbon neutral future. It's really about creating an adaptation for Generation Z, for the aging healthy within our homes. All of these things need to be within one model. And to not do that, we will see a continued rise in unoccupied homes, a lead to fragmentation of communities, and escalation of the cost on social care. The second area where we're obviously seeing an opportunity or a concern is the high street. We've seen with social distancing, a fifth of small shops are closing. We've seen a 30% drop in commercial real estate. And interesting, residential high density and specifically skyscrapers are really incompatible with the government guidelines. And this is important because these ramifications are really going to transform the built environment's current model for success. And the government's pledge to shake up the planning system to allow more landlords to switch from commercial to residential use. So what does that mean for our town centers, our high streets, where they've been built around this mixed use model that this commercial draw has been what's kept things lively? We need to rethink this. We also need to look at the fact that urban centers were the ones that had, the urban centers basically with the highest air pollution were the ones that were hit the hardest from COVID. And so we need to think about these centers and what people literally need in order to be supported, whether it's economically, socially, or in terms of health. We really need to repurpose our high streets. You know, the artery of commerce needs to be given a new vision. And what is that? Finally, my final point is around we need to look at this opportunity that's among us. The Center for Digital Built Britain is hoping to create a number of systems within a system. And this will basically allow industry standards and assets to be forged so that we can better coordinate, manage, and optimize productivity. And this is really a crucial opportunity because if the government's going to meet its net zero target by 2050, this is the opportunity to build this information management framework so that things can operate simultaneously, that we can manage assets and weaknesses with agility. And to meet the UK's carbon target for 2050, we really need to distribute what this cost is going to be, but also we need a coordinated approach to solve the skill shortage that cannot be met. It really is, we don't have the workforce, so we really need to think more innovatively about how we're going to get us there. And I'd like to make a final point, well, a second to final point. This is an overview of basically where I think these opportunities are. So in multi-generational living, you've got, adaptable buildings, and within that, we need innovation around MMC. We need it around the circular economy passports and guidance on materials that are used in the home that impact health. How can we avoid that? We also need to look at housing. We talk about mobility as a service, but housing as a service is crucial. We need to start bringing in the lessons from age tech and sensors to catalyze something that will suit all generations and to make our homes work more as a service that is ongoing, that is holistic. High streets, again, we need to balance somehow the social, economic, environmental need. And so I think, bringing in AI surveys to get a better sense of what our assets are, really mobilizing planning tools that are designed for the local people to really have a word in how their services and spaces are designed and what they're for. And also focusing on and moving forward on the social connectivity that we've seen through COVID. We need to maximize that more. And I think the social tech has really been showing us that there's more to be done in that area. And finally, the importance of linking assets networks in real time. We need to support the public sector's migration into the systems of systems. And finally, system and service performance measurement is really crucial. We need to have something that is being monitored, measured, and is about customer-facing communication to either support skilling up or support the customers themselves. So as my final slide, I wanted to just review. I'm not sure if anybody's been reading Green Swans that was published in April, but it reminded me that when I worked for the NHS in 2018, the strategy team really brought an importance on the sustainable development goals. They're, over 20 years old now. They've been rejigged, but they are forming the basis for the NHS, and they really have an important message for us. And one of the things that I got from the Green Swans that I didn't realize was that not only are there 17 goals, 169 targets, but they're actually being focused in 4 specific areas. One of them, food and agriculture, but cities, energy and materials, and health and well-being. So I encourage you all to not only familiarize yourself with the sustainable development goals, but to allow the targets to be the foundation of your intentions going forward, because we really need to catalyze this social, economic, and environmental model within all that we do. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much, Annalise. It's really brilliant to hear about the kind of like the inspiring kind of entrance speech coming from the Catapult. It's really important for us to know kind of like the challenges and the scope of where and how we can build our industry and build houses fit for the future for the next generation as well. I really like what you said about housing as a service. It's definitely something that is kind of food for thought for the audience, and I really like how kind of what you said also links up with the other sectors like the energy and the food sectors as well. So I just having a look at the Q&A. If anyone has any questions, please put it in the Q&A box. I haven't got any so far, but if I may, I've got a few questions for you, Annalise. So referring back to your point about kind of how buildings are not fit for the kind of present at the moment, how it's affecting the health of tenants and homeowners. Can you give us an idea of how much this is costing us, really?
Well, I mean, I think the quote from the NHS, which I think it was a BRE quote, has probably been around since about 2011, and it's the same one. I think the number is about 1.4 billion or 1.6. I think the cost of poor housing is really, through COVID, I think it's exacerbated because we can't get out, because people who were already suffering from, for example, depression through isolation, they've even been more isolated. So that has had, you know, the restrictions of having to stay in your environment is one thing. So this is why going back to looking at sort of a multi-generational home would be something that would offset that. You would have people on hand. And I think also looking at the fact that we have space standards, but they're not fit for purpose. We all know that. And the model of how people are living in residential high density, it means they don't have space for, you know, having these work environments. You know, how many times have we all had a call where somebody's partner is in the bathroom and it's echoing, you know what I mean? They're having a conference call and we're having a conference call. I mean, it's tragic, really, but also for children who just don't have space to do their work, or you know, to have that sort of level of commonality and yet separation is really needed. And currently we don't have that. So the health ramification and the cost ramification, off the top of my head, I'm not too sure, but I'd say it's a lot more than 1.4 billion, that's for sure.
Well, probably something that we definitely have to kind of ask the government and MPs themselves and see whether we can find some information about that. We've got two. We've got two questions actually coming in. So one question is, how important is indoor air quality in sustainable and healthy housing?
Oh my God, vital, absolutely vital. I mean, one of the failings from the built environment is that we do not measure health impacts. We've never done it. It's something that's remained separated. It's something that we do have capabilities. The sensors are there, but they're not strong enough. So that is definitely an area. And I think the Building Performance Institute of Europe, I think they had a 2018 report that discussed that if you were to measure sort of, I think the top 5 was ventilation, thermal, air quality, acoustics, and I forget what the last one was. But these are absolutely paramount measures of health that need to be a part of all of our homes. So when we're retrofitting in this actually needs to be in the future homes, that occupants and those who are responsible for maintaining the units have a transparent access to how that unit is performing and its potential impacts or not on the occupant itself. And it's something we're not doing, and it's mandatory, absolutely mandatory.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, thank you very much. And we've got one more question from Pam Alexander. Focus on adaptable homes is crucial, but that isn't the same as multi-generational living, which is a specific demand. What is the evidence for high demand for this?
I forget what the report was. There's been a lot of reports that, I mean, I think there's two things. One, we have a large percentage, I mean, 7% of the UK's homes are barely decent. So they do need to be upgraded. But my thought is, upgraded to what? To decent standard? Possibly. To net zero? Absolutely. But then what happens when Generation Z moves in? So I think we need to look at these homes and see what their purpose is for today's occupant, but also what that flexibility should look like. And so I think there's two things. One, we have an excess of student accommodation. We have an excess of residential high density, and we have an excess of basically homes that are being built that are not for the market demand. So how do we make use of, let's say, the commercial that's becoming residential, how do we purpose these homes, and what is the standard that should be to allow that to be any generation that could be in that home is one, but also creating the homes that are multi-generational. So working within a space that could actually house your 30-year-old son, which we're seeing an increase in those who are 30 and older living with their family still, and also the generation post 65, they're also wanting to stay in their home longer. And so you have an opportunity to that, instead of relying on the social care, the NHS, assisted living, if you could balance it out, if you considered who else could be living in that home. And so it's about looking at the materials and the services and the tech that could adapt that home to accommodate that long term that's going to be there, because the majority of the homes that we're living in right now are the ones we're going to have for the next 50 years. So we need to be focusing on them because they're causing quite a bit of crisis in terms of the social care.
Sure. Thank you very much, Annalise. I think we've got a few more questions on the, not in the Q&A, in the chat box. But what I'm going to do is, because we have to kind of move on to the next speaker, what I'm going to do is just to collect all these questions and then leave it to the end of the kind of like the panel Q&A, and then we'll answer that in due course. But if I just ask everyone to just use the Q&A box instead of a chat box, that'll be really helpful. Thank you very much. So thank you, Annalise, for speaking. I will have to move on to Jessie Wild, our next speaker from Bristol Housing Festival. So Jessie has been doing a lot of innovation in Bristol, especially in promoting better homes and better community living across Bristol. So I really love their slogan here, is re-imaging better ways to live our city. So I'm going to pass on to Jessie now. Jessie, I'll let you take over.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Sarah. It's a real honor to be here, actually. Thank you so much for inviting us. It's really great to be here. So let me start by just saying that what I'm going to do is take you on a little bit of a journey about the Bristol Housing Festival and talk a little bit about, you know, what's going on in Bristol as a city and the kind of the innovation that's going on there. So for us, the Bristol Housing Festival, it's a 5-year project, and it's looking at about how we bring forward innovation in house building. So using new technologies such as modern method of construction or offsite manufacturing technologies. So essentially technology where part or whole of a house is built in a factory and then brought into site. So it's much more of a kind of manufacturing process rather than a traditional built process. But it's also looking at how do you bring in those new technologies in a way that is into a city and for a city. So we want to look at how do you use those new solutions and innovative ideas and use them to within a city to look at moving those kind of ideas from theory into practice. But also thinking about how do we use housing to address some of the other issues that we face. So we know that we live in a housing crisis, that we are struggling with a housing crisis in this country. We know that it's a crisis of availability of housing, of affordability of housing. As Annalise was already talking about, it's a crisis around the suitability of that housing in lots of different aspects there as well. So what we want to do is think about, as we're bringing forward innovation, as we're looking at kind of new technologies of housing, how can we use those houses to start to address different issues that a city might face? So can you use housing, for example, to lower some of those costs that Annalise was talking about? Can we use housing and the way we build housing to improve mental and physical health of a city? Could we use housing and the way that we build housing to promote healthy and flourishing communities, to address some of those UN sustainability goals that, again, Annalise mentioned earlier? So that's kind of what we exist to look at, and it's all in the context of Bristol City has something called the One City Plan. So that is a collaborative organized document that's been put together looking at goals for 2050. And you'll see on the left here there's one goal that I've kind of highlighted just there, saying that everyone will live in an affordable home that meets their needs within a thriving and safe community. So that's this Bristol's One City Plan goal for 2050 for the city of Bristol. So for us, as we look at the Bristol Housing Festival, as we look at everything, we're looking at how can we think long term, how can we think strategically, and how can we think about the city as a whole, not just thinking about housing when we're talking about innovation. So what are we? Well, I mean, the Bristol Housing Festival, we're not builders, we're not developers, we're not landowners or anything like that. We are what we call an enabler. We're an enabling organisation, and we exist to enable innovation, essentially. So we're not necessarily the experts in all the different areas that we might want to talk to or speak into, but we are an organisation that kind of acts as a convener. So we bring together experts in all these different areas to look at how do we help to unlock innovation and enable it to be used and taken forward. So we get involved with kind of build projects within the city. We're getting involved in research and evaluation of those build projects as well, to make sure that we're learning the lessons and capturing that kind of the unlocking that's gone on there, as well as running events that kind of showcase what we're learning as we go. So the images you can see on your screen at the moment are images from our launch event, the first major showcase we did back in 2018, where we popped up 6 modular houses from different companies to show and open freely to the public and to all sorts of different organisations to show what it looks like, to show what MMC housing is, and to start a conversation about all the kind of interweaving and intermeshing issues that surround how we build houses as we go forward to the future. In 2019 was our next kind of major event, and this time, instead of bringing physical houses to the city, we focused on hosting some of those conversations around housing, and looking at how do you think about affordability? How do we start to tackle this? How do we think about innovation and unlocking innovation, and bringing together various different leaders in the field to ask some of those questions? So we will be having some sort of exhibition this year in 2020, but obviously in current circumstances it may well be a digital one, so do watch out for that. It's coming, and then there'll be something else again hopefully in 2021. So what I want to do though now is just kind of focus on a couple of really good examples of the types of things that I'm talking about. So Launchpad was the first completed project. It was officially opened in October 2019, and just as an example, the innovation that was kind of captured in this sort of sat into 2 categories. So first, it was innovation in the building, in the way that it was, the technology that was used, the way it's constructed. So this company, it's a company called Integra that designed these and built these. It's their first residential building. They look like containers, but they're actually not. It was based on a model from Amsterdam, where they did use containers, and so that kind of feel wanted to be replicated, but actually in Bristol, containers were seen to be too small, so it wanted to be bigger. So they're actually purpose built, and they're bigger than a container would be. It's 31 homes, and it is innovative. It's innovative in the way that, as I said, this company have used this. But the other element of innovation is this kind of social purpose section. So the project in Amsterdam was it was a co-living project where students from a local university and refugees came to live together to work with each other and live together and learn from one another. And the team behind this particular project wanted to see, how do you put that into a Bristol context? So here we have living key workers, care leavers that have been come through 16 to 25 independent people, which is a local charity here. And also you have students from the University of Bristol, all co-living, and it's a self-managing scheme, so they're learning to live together and share spaces and that kind of thing. And we're gonna watch, and we're gonna have a conversation with them, and we've started to kind of gather feedback from how that is actually going. But you have those kind of different types of innovations. So it's the construction innovation, but it's also how we're doing addressing some of the social issues for innovation as well. The second example I just want to show you is the next one that should be completed, all being well, everything going to plan. So this should be with us and completed by autumn this year. This is the Zed Pot scheme. It's in the east of the city of Bristol. And again, it kind of, the innovation falls into those 2 categories. So the first lot of innovation is the building. It's designed, the whole buildings, the Zed Pods themselves have been designed to be as low carbon as possible, but also it's innovative in the way that the land is used. So this is going to continue to be, it currently is and will continue to be, a working public car park, and then the houses will sit on stilts above the car park. But then the kind of social innovation of this is we've been working with a company, a charity, YMCA in Bristol, and they have been doing a lot of work about how do you build community around those people that most need it. And they've got some other projects in Bristol as well. And so this is an extension of the work they've been doing, and it's looking to provide move-on accommodation for young people that have experienced some sort of housing crisis, working with Bristol City Council to make sure that these houses not only provide homes and spaces for these young people, but also provide a community and a way to kind of connect in and look at what support can be used as part of that. But really, in everything that we do, we are looking at what's the story behind it. We need to start breaking down silos. When it comes to enabling innovation, we must start to break down the silos between politics, between industry, between public. There's just so much that sits within those silos, and the conversation just so rarely goes between those different elements. So as much as we can, what we're trying to do is break down those silos and provide places such as the events in our research that are accessible to all those different groups of people, to both celebrate but also to reimagine together the future of the city. And finally, I just want to flag to you a project that we are delighted that we can now talk about publicly. So it's announced last Friday. I'm working with Bristol City Council and a project. This is a project that is being led by a company called YTKO, and it's been funded by Innovate UK. So we are, as I said, delighted to be able to talk about this now. You can see the name there, Enabling Housing Innovation for Inclusive Growth. And it's a consortium of partners. There are lots of different partners that have come together to make this bid possible, including BRE and about 9 different modular providers, and it's looking to unlock the barriers of innovation specifically around MMC house building within Bristol. So it's a variety of different MMC partners, from sort of local SMEs such as Norwest Media Centre through to large national volumetric companies such as Booklook and L&G Modular Homes. And what can we, looking at working with Bristol City Council, what can we learn from all of these different methodologies and all of the different ways they're coming into Bristol to look at trying to build houses here? What can we learn collectively as a group such that we're enabling innovation and unlocking it going forward, and then able to share that so that it doesn't have to be that everybody has to unlock the same barriers all at once, but we can start to move forward together. Well, thank you so much, and I will hand back over to Sarah.
Thank you very much, Jessie. It's really amazing to see what you're doing in Bristol, and personally from Connectedness Catapult, we do like seeing the kind of like the depths that you go into in terms of generating innovation in the cities, and creating growth and well-being for the society, especially when you said about young people and creating better living for these young people. That's something definitely when we talk about kind of like the next generation and creating fit for future. That's something that we definitely have to think about. And really interesting with your examples of Zed Pot and Launchpad. And what you said about also kind of the collaboration, breaking the silo between stakeholder groups, working across councils and large corporates and SMEs. I think that's really important, and that's personally from the Connectedness Catapult point of view, this is something that we would really kind of encourage businesses to do as well. So just coming in, 2 questions for you. So first of all is these examples of innovative housing seem very exciting. However, they have a temporary feel. What is the estimated lifespan of these buildings?
Oh, it's a really good question. So some of the MMC that is out there that exists is, as you say, for temporary use, and it's designed to be used maybe for kind of 10 years or so, and then moved or recycled. But there's a lot of it out there actually, and both of these examples are examples of this, of housing that is built to last. So the Zed Pods, the figures I've got off the top of my head, they have a warranty for 60 years, but an expected lifespan of over 100 years. So they're definitely not designed to be temporary quick solutions, if that makes sense. They are designed for the long term. I don't know the numbers for the Integral one off the top of my head, but there's a lot of the things that we're working with are designed to be there for essentially permanent housing. They're designed for the long term.
Okay, great, thank you. And the next question is, from Andrew King. I'm curious what approaches to build community have been used on the Zed Pot project. Can you speak about that?
Yeah, I can give you a little bit on that. So working with the YMCA, like I said, that they're the ones that we've been working with on this most, and they have a backpackers hostel in the centre of Bristol that it's about 80 beds, and as part of that they use the kind of the funding that comes from the commercial element of the backpackers hostel to fund 8 or 9 of the rooms that they then give over specifically to young people that have come through some sort of emergency housing crisis, and so they don't need to rely on government grants and that kind of thing. They can fund those rooms themselves. But the beauty of that is that they then look at things like a weekly meal where everybody is invited, and it's a space where staff and backpackers and those that are seeking refuge in those rooms, they're not labelled as such. People can just come as individuals and meet and make friends and have dinner together, and it's things like that YMCA bring a real kind of expertise in. I mean, that's just one example, but that they've been working on for a while, that we're going to draw into this project with the Zed Pod so that they can bring those expertise and start to build that into the building community. Now with the Zed Pods, there are 11 homes in that strip. 4 of them are going to go to YMCA young people, 5 of them are going to go to Bristol City Council's housing register, and then 2 on the end are going to be given over to under what the YMCA to what we're going to be calling community builders or community ambassadors, and their role will be as kind of stewards of the community at the end, for want of a better phrase. So they're going to be able to live in those homes but have a role to look at how do you build that community, how do you ensure that everybody's able to support one another and kind of move that forward as a community. So the real kind of nitty-gritty details are yet to be worked out, but that's the intention.
Oh, that's really interesting. Thank you. You know, if you want to find out more about from Jessie, definitely get in contact with her about Absolutely. That. Okay, so we've got 2 or 3 more questions. So our next question is, how accessible are the modular homes for wheelchair users, for example?
Yeah, it's a really good question. It depends, as with every kind of home, depending. It doesn't really matter how it's built. It needs to be considering for wheelchair users and other kind of accessibility requirements, and each modular company needs to be going on that journey themselves, so that as they are building their houses, those things are being planned in. And it's also thinking about the kind of whole of life as well, so that somebody may move in and not specifically have a specific need, but actually if they want to stay living where they live and end up developing some sort of accessibility requirement, those homes need to be built in a way that those kind of adaptations can be added simply and easily and inexpensively as well, so that people can stay there. Now, some companies are much further along the journey of kind of thinking those things through than others, but it is one of the things as the Housing Festival, as we're having conversations with companies, we're trying to kind of make sure that that's included in the conversation, because it's such an important part of, as you say, having building homes that are suitable and accessible as well as affordable and available.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, these conversations, we have to kind of have it quite regularly so that we can definitely continue to improve on the projects, definitely. So I'm just going to answer maybe two more questions. So the next one is, I'm Jessie, I'm unfamiliar with the mobility network in Bristol. How engaged are these organizations that are seeking to provide affordable housing also involved in providing affordable or inclusive access and mobility to potential residents as well?
So I think that comes back to the question that I just answered in terms of that it's different for each company, it's different, but it's one of the things as the Housing Festival we're trying to champion along the way to ask companies to be thinking about this. One of the companies we're working with, for example, they're right in the very beginning as they set up as an organisation, their whole design has been around whole of life, lifetime standards, making sure that everything is accessible from the word go and adaptable so that it can be made accessible, even if it isn't obviously to start with. And other companies, they need support in that area, and they need people that have the expertise in that to be able to offer advice, to help them adapt their designs as they go forward. What's interesting about modern methods of construction, and particularly factory built housing, actually, is that the design means that if you can get in at the right stage, that because houses are essentially coming off a factory production line, if you can change the design right at the beginning, it means that all the houses are going to look like that, ideally. So it's about keeping those conversations going and keeping pressing on that agenda to make sure that as the market grows, because it's fairly young and yeah, it is fairly young in this country. So actually, as this modern methods of construction industry is growing in the UK, we can make sure that that is a priority and a really kind of, yeah, it's something that is really thought of as the industry grows.
Yeah, sure. Thank you very much, Jessie. I think definitely there are more questions coming in, but what I'm going to do is definitely to collate these questions and then kind of bring you back at the end of the panel Q&A, and then you can answer more of these. So before I introduce the next speaker, I actually forgot to do one thing for both for Jessie and also for Annalise. So I'm going to put up a poll for everyone. So that's going to go on your screen. The first one is to ask, whether you would be interested to put into contact with Annalise following this webinar, yes or no, and then you can. What we're going to do afterwards is to make introduction by email, and same with also the second question for Jessie as well. So I'm just going to give you a few minutes to do that. Okay, so I think we've got the polling done for Annalise. So the next poll, if it comes up, for Jessie. Yeah, sorry, I just have to give it a few minutes for the results to come through before I introduce this next speaker. Okay, I think, yep, definitely we've got all the results in for that. So thanks for voting on a poll. I'm pretty sure, it is kind of a new thing for us as well. So sometimes, we have to figure out IT. But the next speaker up, we've got a SME speaker introducing Hagop from Bowtie Construction. So Hagop's working in this small business who's developing building passive homes. So he's helping their clients develop several eco-build projects that can create low energy living and housing. So I'll pass over to Hagop to talk more about his business.
There we go. Okay, I assume everyone can hear me. I'm unmuted. Start my video. There we go. Hi everyone, thank you for your attention today, and thanks for that last presentation. Very interesting. Great to see the Zed Pods being rolled out. I've been following them for a while. Get my slideshow going. Okay. So I work for Bowtie Construction. I'd say we are London's leading passive house construction company. Passivhaus is probably the world leading specification in low energy building. That's in terms of energy performance and also comfort. So there's a few photos up top showing some of our projects, showing some retrofits to the Passivhaus standard and to near Passivhaus, and also some new builds. Last year we won an RABA award in Camden for Camden Mews. We won an RABA London and an RABA Sustainability Award. This is a near zero carbon home, as near zero as we can to operational carbon for a home that's in the middle of London, which was quite a challenge. And you can see that a lot of the other buildings, it's quite a diverse range of typologies, and each one's had its own challenges to sort of bringing down the operational carbon to say 10% of a comparable building on the same street or in the same area. And with that, you also get a lot of other benefits. You get constant filtered air and massively improved comfort. We are a small business. Our annual turnover is around 5 million. We're growing 25% year on year organically. We've completed quite a lot of refurbs, and we also deliver workshops. We have a lot of architects and other construction professionals coming to visit our sites to see what we get up to and see how we solve some of the challenges that we face on site. I'm now going to show you a bit of a video, something that we recently put together. In terms of innovation, we're always looking at ways to de-risk our projects and to save time on site and save stress. Because the kind of work we do is so challenging, we're often having to kind of find value for money solutions so that the client isn't massively paying over the odds for their project. So here's an example of a house where none of the walls are parallel. So the steel construction was extremely complicated. And what came to us as the design for the steelworks on 20 pages in 2D, we essentially went to the site, we took a laser scan of the site. This is how it was presented to us, the sort of concrete pad that was built. We laser scanned it. We then built a 3D model in Inventor, which is a very, very accurate 3D software. And we then combined all the steel drawings together into our own 3D model, which was then shared with the structural engineers. It was shared with the steel fabricators. And once everyone had approved it, it was then used to actually fabricate the steels. Once we had this model, we built the rest of the house on top of it. And this allowed us to size everything to the steel work. It allows us to put in all the services connections, and also to actually build the windows into the frame and then order the windows directly from the frame, which we've never done before, and we don't think anyone else that does projects around this size does. But it essentially meant that everything that was delivered to site fit perfectly first time. There was no adjustment required, which is never planned for, and it's always an extra cost that has to be passed on to the client. This is an example of a gutter detail that we built in 3D, purely so that our builders could see exactly how it came together, and they weren't just looking at section drawings. And here's another sort of foundation pad, foundation connection detail. Again, it's so our builders can see exactly how they go together, they know exactly what they're doing, and this kind of front loading the construction process with further design massively saves time on site, and it just reduces sort of doubt. We're now jumping forward to actually being on site, and the setting out engineer took that 3D model we built earlier, and he's going with his total station, and he's marking out all the connection points where the steels are going to get attached to the foundation, to the concrete pad. We're drilling the holes before the steels are even on site. Then the steels come onto site and they're bolted exactly where they want to go. Everything fits perfectly. So we're really happy with the way this has gone with this build, and we're going to be taking this approach forward on all our sort of comparable new build projects. I'm now going to talk about Energy Sprung. We won a research and development competition, EU funded, from Energy Sprung UK, where we were given a subject building in Kensington. And we were asked to come up with a retrofit solution to take this building, which is a 1950s apartment block, to net zero operational carbon. For those who haven't heard of Energy Sprung before, essentially it's a very simple proposition for housing associations and landlords, where it agrees, it sort of promises to the residents that their home will be 21 degrees indoors all year round, that they will have 40 minutes to 180 litres hot water per day included in what you call the service plan, and also their sort of typical energy plug load. And the idea is that their service plan replaces their utility bills. They no longer have a gas bill, an electric bill, standing charges. They just have an annual service plan, And typically the service plan equates to about a quarter of what they were paying previously when you added up all their bills. That amount is set by the landlord and the housing association, but that's the sort of typical ratio. And we feel the best way to deliver this is to use passive house design. And so we're implementing all these principles into our R&D concept. This shows you the location of the subject building, Treadgold House. It's very close to Grenfell Tower, and it's on the Lancaster West estate. Here's our 3D design, just to give you a bit of an idea of what it looks like on the outside. And the challenges with whole building retrofit are these panelized systems come in, they very rarely fit precisely. They have to be adjusted on site. And that adjustment, it A, increases cost, it B, increases the time you spend on site, it massively inconveniences the occupiers, because when these energy sprung retrofits take place, the occupiers, they stay living in their homes, they're not decanted. So the adjustment duration and having, you know, people trying to chop off corners of panels and make panels fit together, we're really trying to design out of the whole process. So we're using a passive house enhanced design to improve performance, to then reduce the amount of plants required to keep these houses warm and provide the hot water. And we're using that front-loaded design process to try to design out any kind of these connection issues that other panelized systems tend to have. So the installation is much faster, it's lower disruption, it's on time, and it's on budget. As far as the actual energy performance, the performance of the building as it is now has been modeled here. So this is the heat load. This is the amount of heat that's needed in kilowatt hours per meter squared per year to heat one of these flats. And currently it's around 550. And once we have done the retrofit, that's going to drop to 40. So it's dropping by, you know, to sort of 8% of what it was. And this also shows you what we will get from internal heat gains, which are things like fridges and kettles and toasters being run inside the property. And these are the solar gains. So that is infrared radiation that enters the properties as light and is then held inside the properties by the efficient envelope and the fact that the envelope is now draft proof. And there's heat recovery ventilation, which provides continuous fresh air to well, most rooms, but definitely every flat, and also retains the heat. And here's kind of an exploded diagram of the system. So it shows the panelized system, which is going to be sort of class 1 fireproof, you know, class 1 fire compliant. So no combustible materials. I think, wait, the panelized wall going on, roof going on with solar panels, air source heat pumps, and mechanical heat recovery ventilation in the new loft space. And we're also adding balconies, much bigger balconies. So I've got a few renders of the project that I'm going to whip through. What's also really important to us is, and this is where I see the innovation as well, is making the residents part of this. Because if we just plonk a new high-tech energy efficient building on the residents and say, here you go, love this, they're going to say, well, we didn't ask for this and we weren't part of this process. And so, you know, part of the innovation is not just nuts and bolts and steel, it's how do you actually involve the residents in the process, and how do you make sure that you're giving them a place that's nicer to live than it was before and is not just lower bills and warmer. So I'm a permaculture designer, and I try to involve permaculture in every project I do. And so a big part of that is just sort of the people care. So it's making sure that residents have the ability to grow food, and maybe that we create some kind of a food growing program, so that we have on-site greenhouses where we can germinate seedlings, and there can be a group of residents who get together and do that work. And those seedlings then get distributed to the wider community to have on their balconies. Sort of one of the examples. Our brick facade is also allows printing of designs onto the bricks. And so we plan to have resident-led programs where they can get together and come up with designs, and all the residents can vote on which designs they want to see, either on individual bricks or potentially spread across kind of several bricks and larger areas, and filling some of those plain brick areas where there's no windows, filling some of them with graphics and motifs. We're going to make the installation as low operational carbon as possible, so using electric spider cranes and electric vehicles and sort of last 5-mile relay stations for electric delivery into London. We're planning on having a public web portal to display the information on how the project is performing. And these logos you see below, Bowtie Construction, the lead on this project, also working alongside Gardner Stewart Architects, Mauer UK, who will provide the wall panels, and Neelang will be providing the mechanical and electrical systems, so the heating and the hot water. And this is a concept, so we haven't been like awarded the contract to build this out, but this is a concept, and we're very much hoping that our BKC will want to take it forward. So thanks a lot for listening, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Hagop. It's a really interesting speech and really interesting to know about your business as well. Really interesting case study for, especially, for me, I'm interested in that Gold House. I think I've seen that before because I really live near kind of Grenfell area in West London, so I probably have seen it before. So, but it's really interesting and really amazing to see the kind of the results and the kind of the drop in heat flow, and good to see your plans in expanding your product line and your installation plans as well. I've just got a few questions. I'm probably going to answer 3 and then move on to the end of the Q&A panel. Just a question from Matt. What materials are used to insulate the pods, and are they insulated to the Passivhaus standard or some other standard?
Yeah, great question. So the insulation we're using is rock wool, mainly because it doesn't catch fire. Due to the change in fire regulations, there's no kind of high performance foams. There's none of the like high performance insulation materials that you might see on some of our retrofits. It's rock wool. It's going to be 200 mil in most places, 150 mil in other places. We've used the Enefit standard, Passivhaus Enefit, as our benchmark for the design. It's not going to be certified unless the client decides they want to certify it, but right now there's no demand to certify it to Enefit. But we've used, we're going for an air tightness target of 1 air change per hour, and we're using MVHR, and we're using all the typical elements you'd see on a Passivhaus retrofit of a building of this size. Okay, great.
So I guess maybe kind of leading on from Matt's question, he also asked, did you use PIR foam, potentially flammable foams, or for insulation, or was it glass fiber or similar? No.
There's no foams in this design at all. The only material we're using for insulation is rock wool.
Okay, great. So another question from Dave Sampson. Will you be adding air quality monitoring given its location?
It's a good question. That's not part of the scope of the project right now, but we are keen on providing monitoring data. So on most of the projects we do, there's no budget for monitoring. The clients are individuals, and adding monitoring to a 500k refurb actually adds 10 or 15 grand. But in this case, we're very keen on monitoring the performance and the quality as part of the storytelling, as part of conveying how the project performs. And this being a demonstrator, we really want to gather good data on it so that we know which sort of elements to tweak or change or upgrade or downgrade for the next one. So I would think that we would look to have both indoor and outdoor air quality monitoring as part of the information gathering.
Okay, great, thank you. So I want to kind of come back to Matt's question about insulation panels. It's probably too technical for me, so please answer as much as possible, Hagop. Aerogel or vacuum insulation panels, do you use them? If so, or why not? If so, why, and why not?
We've used aerogel. We've used aerogel in our Bloomsbury project. If you email me, I'll happily email you the write-up in Passivhaus Plus for that project. We use that on party walls of our Bloomsbury projects because aerogel is very, very slim profile. It's sort of 1 centimeter very high performance. It's used in space shuttles, on the wingtips of space shuttles. And it basically meant that we could stay with this 1800s look and insulate the party wall, but not overlap the moldings and the covings, so that the planning officer, buildings grade 2 listed, would still approve the changes that we'd made. Vacuum panels we also use. We tend to use them for foundations of NFIT buildings. We tend to bury them into the ground so they come down as deep as the sort of basement foundation, so there's no thermal bridges there. So they will slightly overshoot the foundation slab.
Okay, great, Hagab. Yeah, I've got one more question, but I'll put that at the end. I'm afraid we are kind of running a little bit behind now. So I'll just introduce the next speaker. Thank you very much, Hagab, for your presentation. So there's a poll as well. If you want to be in contact with Hagab, please tick yes on the poll. And I just want to quickly introduce you to the next speaker, Oksana from Biome. So Oksana has developed an amazing kind of natural materials to implement into construction to build homes. So, she has achieved some really good outputs in reducing waste and helping our environments become greener. So I'm just going to hand over to Oksana to talk about her business.
Thank you, Sarah, for the introduction. I'm very honored to be a part of this event and contribute to all the very important conversations we've been having today. So let's try and share the screen. Okay, so hello everybody. My name is Oksana Bonda and I'm Director of Design at Biome. And as part of today's webinar, I'd like to take the opportunity and talk to you about biomimetics and how nature can inspire all of us to revolutionize construction and how we do exactly that at Biome. But before I do that, I'd like to tell you why we do what we do. And we do this because our built environment, infrastructure of our cities, our industries and transport are the largest contributors to the climate crisis we're in. Our industry is toxic, extractive, and vandalizing. Our land is being carved and deforested. Our waste is piling. Our plastic islands and mountains are growing. And according to NASA, last year was the hottest year on record, with the Earth's global surface temperatures increasing by 1.1 degrees. And we're on a trajectory to raise this number to 5 degrees by the end of the century. The planet's long-term warming trend has caused wildfires to race through the planet and freak storms to destroy and displace our communities. We share the Earth with around 15 million species of extraordinary plants, animals, and microorganisms, and all this magnificent biodiversity is being lost due to changes in land use and sustainable use of natural resources, climate change, and pollution. And today, about 23% of mammals and 12% of birds are considered as threatened, of which many are becoming extinct. Humanity is faced with a mammoth but self-inflicted problem. And at Biome, we share the belief that there is a solution, and it has the name biomimicry or biomimetics. Biomimetics is design inspired by the way functional challenges have been solved in biology. And one of the fine but subtle examples of applied biomimetics is actually the Gherkin building. Its structure was configured by the very intricate but robust form of the Venus basket coral. Nature has faced and resolved all challenges through centuries of evolution and holds answers to engineering, design, and systemic problems. And if we look closer, we will find that in nature, the concept of waste is non-existent. All nutrients are in constant circulation. All forms are highly functional, and all organisms work with one another in symbiotic partnerships. Such principles are the foundation of what is known as circular economy. Currently, we operate in a very linear way. We take, we make, we use, and dispose. However, when we shift towards the circular economy, this line will start to curve and move in infinite circles, allowing us to design out waste, continuously circulate all biological and technological nutrients, and by doing so, we'll have a regenerative impact on the environment, society, and economy at long last. These principles are at the core of everything that we do at Biome. Biome is a research and development-led company that allows nature to lead innovation, to revolutionize construction and create a healthier and more sustainable built environment. We offer a collection of bio-based materials, circular construction systems, as well as research services to the industry. And the first material I'd like you to meet today is ORB, or organic refuse biocompound. At the core of ORB, or in fact all of our materials, are local waste streams. We transform food and agricultural waste into substrates, combine it with our unique organic binder, which is made of edible ingredients that are available in abundance globally. This compound is then used to create highly functional construction materials with a variety of visual and mechanical qualities. ORB can be used for dry cladding, interior architecture, as well as product and furniture design. At the end of its life, it can be cold composted or fed back into our manufacturing processes. Our materials allow companies we are working with to deliver on their carbon targets and achieve their sustainable development goals. And for example, we are engaged with Google and Restaurant Associates. And Google is very fond of their orange juice and produce 3 tons of orange peel per week, which they find very difficult to recycle due to its high acidity. So we have developed an orange peel-based ORB and designed a series of products such as risers, tiles, and fruit baskets that we return back to Google for use across their in-house restaurants. We also work with top designers to deliver on a number of high-end products, such as this piece of lighting that was exhibited last year at in Milan. ORB is currently being developed further for use in exterior applications, as well as it will be soon transformed into a plant-based concrete, which is very exciting. Second material I'd like you to meet is mycelium. And mycelium is a vegetative root structure of mushrooms. So the fruiting body of mushrooms is what we are all familiar with. It grows above the ground and most of us enjoy eating it. And mycelium is the hidden network that exists in the topsoil. It can be found everywhere. It's truly the nature's internet, and it's the way plants communicate with one another and exchange nutrients. And as it grows, it consumes different organic substrates and binds the topsoils. At Biome, we harness the power of mycelium to produce insulation panels. We have collected a library of fungi species and are working with over 300 of them. Our mycelium production process is very minimal. We pick a strain, we expand it, we then introduce a substrate, in this case agricultural waste, and pack it into a mold. Mycelium insulation panels outperform conventional products, and initial tests have shown a thermal conductivity value of 0.024 WMK. Mycelium is also naturally self-extinguishing, and on this screenshots from the BBC documentary, we can observe our mycelium panel being put through some experimental fire testing at the Institute of Making at UCL. Here, a fire source of 1,500 degrees was applied, which only slightly charred the mycelium surface, and the ice chalk placed on top remained intact. Our mycelium insulation has virtually no VOCs or volatile organic compounds. It's graded A+ when it comes to indoor air quality and can be cold composted at the end of its life, or it can be fed back into our manufacturing processes. Yes, you heard it right, mycelium can eat mycelium. Social sustainability is hugely important to all of us at Biome, and we are working in collaboration with social enterprise, the Onion Collective, to establish the world's first community-led biomanufacturing facility in the UK in Watchet, West Somerset. Now, Watchet is the UK's most disadvantaged towns and with the lowest social mobility. And with this facility, we aim to regenerate the local economy by providing jobs and sharing profits with the local community. This facility will be operational from August 2020. And to start with, it will be delivering up to 3,000 square meters of insulation. It will be utilizing at least 30 tons of waste per month and sequester at least 6 tons of carbon per month. This facility is designed to be completely closed loop. Any CO2 produced by mycelium when it grows, which is natural process, is going to be fed through a greenhouse, turned into oxygen, and then looped back into mycelium incubation spaces. Last year, we have won the Plant Plastic Prize from Waitrose and Partners, which has allowed us to continue our groundbreaking development of plastic-consuming strains of mycelium. And now, We have 5 strains that are capable of consuming plastics, such as PE and PU. These champion strains micro-remediate hydrocarbons within the plastics, breaking them down into simple, non-toxic carbon molecules. Although we are achieving rapid plastic degradation rates in comparison to plastic's lifespan, our plastic eating strains are a little slow at the moment. So we're putting these guys through a boot camp to make them faster and stronger and eventually commercialize them, which will have a global significance as it will allow us to buy recycled plastics from construction, packaging, and fashion industries. So watch this space. Our materials will eventually be combined to form our revolutionary construction system, Triagamy. Triagamy consists of interlocking building blocks that do not require any permanent binders or fasteners to create robust buildings. The system allows buildings to be reconfigured and deconstructed at any stage of their life, which means that your home can shrink and grow in accordance to your needs, which will allow us to start transitioning towards agile communities and cities at long last. We are working closely with the world's largest corporations, the world's top universities, and the world's most prominent government. And of course, with local communities, local resources, local businesses globally, to deliver on that dream of biomimetic future together, the future where our industries are regenerative, our lands are nourished, waste is non-existent, our communities are prosperous, and nature is flourishing. And lastly, I wanted to mention that we have launched an equity crowdfunding campaign at Cedars in order to invite our global community to be a part of our vision. So please feel free to join us in our revolution. Thank you. And I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you very much, Oksana. It's really interesting to see such an innovative way to build houses. You know, when we consider material is something that definitely when we talk about kind of the low carbon homes, you know, zero carbon living in the future, you know, is something that we definitely have to consider. So I'm just looking at the questions. I haven't got any so far, but may I ask from a question from me actually, from a business point of view, what is your next step in reaching out to your clients? I understand that you're planning to build the factory with generating materials, but what's the plan after that?
Yeah, great question, Sarah. So like I said, factory is going to be operational from August. So mycelium insulation is our first material to launch on the market. So hopefully that should be available to the industry by the end of this year. Mycelium insulation is going to be closely followed by orb, which is the first material I talked about, which is basically a sheet material, but also can be used to form 3D objects. So that should be launching at some point in 2021. We're going to be expanding the production of mycelium insulation in 2021 as well, because demand that we have been seeing is absolutely huge. And I guess, you know, the more insulation, mycelium insulation we can provide to the industry, the bigger impact it will have, a regenerative impact especially. Closely after mycelium insulation and orb, we're going to be launching Triagamy, which is the construction system, which I personally is extremely excited about, because it is truly revolutionary construction system in my eyes, even though I speak for myself. So we're going to be prototyping that over the next year or two, and then launching in pilot projects as well, because we've seen a huge demand for Triagamy in its many variations. Yeah, I think I'll stop talking. I hope I answered your question.
No, it does. It did, definitely. Thank you very much, Oksana. So one more question. I've got a few more for you, but I will leave it to the end. One more question from you, quite a technical question. So quoting your mycelium insulation, you have thermal resistivity that is apparently lower than the resistivity of air. Is this because the pores are fine enough to cause Knudsen effects? So become vacuum insulating, or is it some other effect? I think someone has a very good technical knowledge in the audience.
Yeah, the thermal conductivity is definitely outperformed a lot of conventional materials on the market. So even synthetic ones, never mind the natural insulation products that are available. It's due to many factors. I mean, mycelium, it also depends on the waste stream that we use, for instance. But what it does is when it grows and eats through the substrate and forms the panel, it actually has a lot of qualities of a foam. So it's got a lot of air pockets. So the porosity and the density of the mycelium product that, you know, we end up with at the end kind of contributes to its thermal insulating qualities. I think that's the best I can answer that question due to my technical knowledge of the subject. I hope I answered it. But
yeah,
it's
you're not.
yeah. And I guess as it grows through a substrate, it consumes it and forms that very intricate form with, like I said, sorry for repeating myself, but it forms the air pockets and a particular way of the density of the material that contributes to it being a great thermal insulator.
Great, thank you very much, Oksana. Definitely a lot more questions for you, but I'll bring it to the end. And if at the end we don't have much time, we can definitely bring it offline after the event as well. So I just brought up a poll to if you want to be in contact with Oksana, please tick so. And I'm just going to introduce our next speaker. We've got two more. So our next one is Suja from Houndstooth Wireless, who's also one of our SME clients. So Suja's developed a very innovative way of detecting drones and how it affects safety risks. So she's now exploring ways that this can be implemented into the built environment sector. So without any further delays, I'll pass it over to Suja.
Thank you. Thank you, Sarah. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Right, lovely. Thank you, Sarah. Hello, everyone. I'm Suja Kerr. I look after partnerships at Houndstooth Wireless, and we're a small technology startup company. What we have is we've designed an accessible solution to detect drones in order to reduce the risks associated with unintentional and malicious use of consumer drones. And it's slightly different to the other SME presentations so far, but I hope it's still an innovation that the built environment sector would be interested in. And I need to say at the onset that we're particularly interested in working with the built environment sector in finding partners that might be interested in trialing our new solution. So if we start with drones themselves, it might be, I mean, you might be aware that drones are quite prevalent, consumer drones are quite prevalent in society today. It might be that you've seen them flying around, or you may know someone that owns one, or you may yourself own one, but really they're quite accessible. So if we look on Amazon, you can find and you can buy a drone that can carry between 0.5 kilo to 1 kilos of payload and have high definition cameras for under £1,000. And what this accessibility has brought about is a real increase, a significant increase in drone ownership. So if we look at the figures for next year, 29 million drones will be sold in next year. And along with this increase in drone ownership and drone shipments, what we've seen is an increase in the misuse and threats posed by consumer drones, and the fact that they're likely to continue to rise. So what are these threats? What I've done is I've highlighted some of these at the top there. The threats posed by drones can be both unintentional or malicious. So unintentional threats can possibly be where a member of the public might be flying a drone and that person loses contact with the drone, and it can collide with people or buildings, and also it can inadvertently take film images of private individuals and private properties without having permission to do so. And in terms of malicious threats posed by drones, we're talking about, again, filming, so infringement of privacy, so it could be paparazzi images, or even breaches of media rights. So if you're filming football matches that have been licensed to Sky Sports, for example, to the other spectrum, which is smuggling and terrorism, and partly to do with the accessibility of consumer drones that can carry these high payloads. Often when we think about drone threats, we do think about certain sectors within the built environment sector as being kind of mostly prominent or mostly susceptible to these risks. And, you know, they'd be airports, critical national infrastructure, prisons, and high density public gatherings. You may all remember the Christmas before last when Gatwick came to a standstill for several days because of a drone threat, and also that prisons the world over have to deal with consumer drones being used for dropping anything from drugs or weapons or even mobile phones over prison fences. But actually, in terms of the threats from drones, it's much wider than that. So if we look at the built environment sector and what's been in the media, you know, sports stadiums, you've got residential complexes, you've got historical buildings, you've got construction sites, and of course public spaces and parks that belong to local authorities. This wide range of built environment sectors have a need to mitigate against the threat from drones. And like local authorities, many of the organisations that find themselves within this wider range of the built environment sector, which have a limited budget, find that they can't really access the solutions to mitigate against these threats. So what we have is a solution that detects and identifies and tracks both drones and controllers. And our proposition from the very beginning in terms of the design stage has been for that solution to be straightforward, accessible and affordable, very much like CCTV cameras. So really the proposition is that anywhere that you might consider a CCTV camera to be installed or as a security feature, our drone detection solution would be a no-brainer. It would be comparably easy and simple to consider and install. And our aim as a company really is to bring drone detection to a wider range of end users, regardless of their budget. So even those widest sectors with modest budgets would have access to the solution. So in terms of how it works, so if we have here a site that needs to be protected, and that might be a residential area, it could be a construction site, it could be a park, a public space that has an overfly zone installed. We would have a series of networked nodes around the perimeter. The number of nodes can vary from one to many, and it would depend on the topology of the site and the characteristics. And again, I'd be delighted to engage with any interested parties to talk about kind of site needs specifically. So each of these nodes would listen out for and scan for radio frequency signals that are sent by controllers or drones, and when they detect a signal, they would alert the staff on the ground, and that alert would come in the form of at the moment emails and SMS messages, but we're also working towards an app. And really the alert would say that a detection has happened, and it would state what the threat type is, so what the model and make of that drone is and where it's been detected, in order for that member of staff to go and address that threat. In terms of alerting, the sensors can alert directly to a member of the staff onto a mobile phone, or it can go through a central security management system in the case that it's integrated into a perimeter security system. So this idea about being able to identify the make and model is particularly important, I think, currently from segments like the construction sector, which also use worker drones. So in order to, our system would be able to distinguish between worker drones and also then give a detection for rogue and unauthorized drones entering the system. Just want to pick out a few kind of unique features for our solution. The first one is the low footprint. So it's got a low size, weight and power features. So it works with power over Ethernet. And this feature is particularly attractive, I think, if we look at the built environment sectors in the long term to sort of future cities and smart cities. So our sensors could form one of the network nodes in smart cities projects, along with, say, a temperature or a pollution sensor node. And this cost-effective element of it means that as the number of nodes increases, it doesn't necessarily inhibit or prohibit the project from going ahead because of the rising costs. Again, our system's been designed to be flexible in terms of power and communication options, so that it can be it could be put up as a part of a fixed setup, or it could be a mobile deployable solution because it can run off a car battery, for example. And again, it's designed to be integrated into existing security systems, but it can operate standalone with its own server as well. In terms of our intellectual property rights, the innovation is very much in the software and the algorithms. We've been very, very lucky to be awarded one of the T-Trig Innovation Awards for the Department of Transport, which we're currently in receipt of. And we're using machine learning algorithms in order to create threat libraries that are artificially intelligence enabled. So again, this is about bringing the cost of the system down in the long term, so that threat libraries don't have to be updated, because the AI enabled system would be able to self-learn. Just to finish off, really, if you're interested at all or have a need for it, it might be because of the cost effective elements of it, or it might be to do with the low footprint. It would be delighted to hear from you. And really, it's about connecting with the built environment sector so that we can discuss what you need, what the needs are, and what use cases there might be, and really to kind of start on that journey to explore potential pilot sites and demonstration opportunities where we can actually install our solutions on your site. We would gain from that just as a learning opportunity, and the site would benefit from actually having our solution. And I think we've talked about, Annalise and Jessie talked earlier about this idea about not working in silos. It would be an amazing opportunity to contribute in the design, delivery and the servicing of built environments, so that we can think about drone detection and security as part of all of these different stages, rather than as a separate silo. And in terms of engaging with us, you'd have an opportunity to get to know our technology, but also to get to know the engineers behind the company, which was set up 2.5 years ago. There's Stephen and Will, who do a lot of the technical work. So they have considerable experience with software, hardware, and in defense systems as well. If you were to engage with us, we'd be delighted to host you at our demonstration development site in Gloucestershire, just really outside Cirencester. And I've got a beautiful picture to entice you to contact me and move towards a meeting. The core team's located in Wiltshire, but we're looking for pilot sites and partners, both local, national and international. The details are below. I'd love to connect on LinkedIn and love to hear from you by email. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Suja. It's really interesting to hear your speech and see what the potential applications are in the built environment. Even though it has not been deployed in this industry yet, but as you said, we have to break that silo. We have to be more collaborative. So really leaving some food for the audience. I actually have some questions for you. But what I'm going to do is, I'm afraid because of time, sure. We will collate all these questions and then we'll get back to you individually for individual audience, so that we can make that link later, definitely.
Sure.
So I'm just going to put a poll up. If you want to contact Suja, just take yes. And then I have to move on to the last speaker, Zed, who's our startup strategy advisor. So as I said, Zed has had quite a wide range of experience in the built environment sector, including running a VC firm. So she would have a lot of insight in the investor space. And, she can definitely share her expertise on what's going on and what's happening in the market. So, Zed, over to you.
Hello. Hi, everybody. I'm just going to share my slides right now. Okay. So I hope everybody can see them now. But yeah, thank you so much for having me today. Thank you, Sarah, for the introduction. And I'm going to talk today a little bit about the innovation as itself, as a concept, first of all, and also some of the insights that I have seen and have been discussed from a VC perspective, but also around the project that I started since lockdown was imposed. So innovation, it is really making a match between the idea, taking it into a phase of a solution, and also seeing how innovation can help us overcome the crisis and the challenges obviously that are taking place right now. There is a quote that I come across earlier that said that it is a crisis is definitely not something to waste, because innovation, when there is a big challenge, innovation can take place in a different form, and it could be very much central, because the problem that is being solved is essentially, the focus is more the focus is to this specific problem. And a lot of my work has been in connecting different stakeholders from the public and the private sector. I have worked in urban mobility and in prop tech, as Sarah mentioned, but it is essentially identifying these innovative solutions and seeing where is the match, and trying to see what are the challenges that each individual side is facing, which was also discussed by the other speakers. So I think through initiatives like that, it is how we are going to see where is the opportunity and how we can work together in order to create a meaningful change. But if we talk about real estate tech and prop tech, so there had been a record investment in real estate tech, especially in specialized funds in Europe prior to COVID, and you can see on the graph how the amount of funds has gone from the past few years, but essentially there had already been a move to implementing new technologies and to digitalization. But what COVID will do to the sector is speed up this digitization processes and the innovation efforts within the organizations. And I think we believe that the mid to long-term effect will be exactly that we'll see a progress in a few months' time that should have taken years otherwise. And obviously, there is a disruption within the individual categories of real estate that is not that is dispersed. So the commercial real estate sector is affected much greater, for example, than residential real estate. And for some, I guess some of the opinions have been that residential real estate will be much more resilient. And I think everybody here kind of has the background of mobility and where the industry had been beforehand. But obviously, before cities were developed, most cities were developed with the car in mind, and how the infrastructure of the cities had to go through a change in order to go through different business models. And right now we have seen many new solutions, as for example this map of companies that are trying to address this issue and trying to give people more opportunity to move from point A to point B in different ways. But a common question has been whether VCs are open for business, and especially in the built environment. And I think what you will see is if you are an entrepreneur right now, obviously the metrics, there is a slight change, I guess, because it's very important for a company, obviously, to be a scalable business model. But right now there is a really big emphasis on profitability over growth for new businesses. I think it's really important to show resilience within the business itself, and also how the business has adapted to the current environment. So being able to demonstrate, for example, a very strong pivot is actually seen in a very good way. And what I have done since lockdown was imposed was create this ecosystem series, which had insights from quite a few VC investors. it was not only focused on the built environment, but a lot of the topics touched upon built environment. And we discussed rebuilding resilient urban cities. We discussed the resilience in and in mental health, especially with co-working as a sector that has been very affected, and the unconscious bias to innovation. And all of these insights, I think, was one of the biggest insights for me was how important it is to connect to each other, and how this kind of connection and how technology does act as an enabler between the different stakeholders. And I think in PropTech especially, we're going to see technology being used in order to connect, for example, tenants and landlords in a much greater amount, and it's going to be vital, whereas perhaps before it was something that was as an option. Right now, I think it's going to be paramount. And for the innovation in the built environment right now, I did mention that the prioritization of digitalization has increased. It is very important for a company to be agile. It is very important to try to adapt its solution to what is going on around, and also especially for a startup. I'm speaking from a startup perspective, but it is really important to assess internally, if you are fundraising, to assess internally the state of the company before approaching investors. And I think a lot of the advice is to focus on product development as well, and also to be focused on not only retaining the current customers, but building out relationships with future customers, and also with potential investors if you are fundraising. So what is the future of PropTech? Obviously, there has been a change in the speed of investments that have gone into the space, but I think, as I mentioned before, I think there is a really big opportunity of acceleration, and I have put a map of kind of the companies in categories, but I think touchless access for sure is something that we're going to see more and more. Wellness and health, especially in commercial real estate, this is one of the biggest concerns, not only for employees, but also for employers, and making sure that systems such as, for example, air purifying systems are in place. I think that's really important. And technology will be used, I think, to address exactly these needs of reducing the human contact in real estate transactions and operations. And the future of urban mobility, I think that we're going to run out of time, but we have seen definitely a move, and it's been driven also by city authorities towards active travel and towards implementing different, whether it's, in London, for example, new cycle lanes, or whether it's increased budgets that are going towards the sustainable modes of travel. And I think it's a very positive development. What has happened within urban mobility is that obviously there is a different amount. People have reduced their level of usage of transport, such as private cars. So right now we need to make sure that there isn't opposite reaction, and we need to, the challenge essentially is right now for people to be going back to using their cars as a dominant mode of transport. And we spoke about drones. I think obviously this is a big area of interest, and something that we have seen recently is the amount of investments that have gone into aerial transport. And I think definitely that's a big area to watch. Yeah, if you would like to connect further, I have also put up this slide.
Thank you very much, Zed. Really interesting speech, and thank you so much for the tips as well. With the kind of current situation, I'm pretty sure that especially for small businesses, they need quite a lot of help in managing across many challenges in that front. So thank you very much. So any questions, we'll put up a poll as well for you. And if you want to get in contact with Zed, please do so. I'm afraid we ran out of time. I have to apologize for this, but if there are any outstanding questions, we're going to collate it and then send it over to you, along with any slides that some of the speakers have agreed to share with you. Then we'll send it over as well, along with the recording. So I have to say this concludes our event. Unfortunately, we have to end somewhere. I hope you all enjoy the presentations, and thank you so much for all the speakers who have presented today. Absolutely well done. Again, if you've indicated that you want to connect with any of the speakers, I will be what I will do is do an email introduction individually. So what I'm going to do is just to pull up the kind of remaining slides from me. I have to wrap up. So let's see if I can do this. So just a few last bits from me on notices and upcoming events. So firstly, our next event is our third Thursday event series, which will happen tomorrow. So this will be getting SMEs ready to globalize into the Singaporean market. So we've got a fantastic line of speakers from our Singaporean partners, as well as DIT, to talk about live projects that are on the lookout for SME partners. So please sign up if you're interested. Next up is also our Urban Links Africa project. So if you hadn't already known, we are running a £1.2 million project with Innovate UK that will be helping UK SMEs form partnerships with South African and Kenyan organizations to develop solutions to city challenges in these countries. So we'll be running a webinar on the 24th of June, which will be providing some in-depth explanation of the open core requirements, challenges, and the application process. And after that, we'll be running some separate webinars to talk about the individual countries as well on the 6th of July, and also on the 8th of July, there you go. So please mark these in your diaries as well. They're all on our events webpage, so please register on there. And last but not least, as you know, we run these Connections Café regularly. So the next one will be on the 22nd of July. So hope to see you there in our next one. Oh, and one more as well. Finally, finishing off with an announcement. We are doing a campaign project for SMEs who are working in the built environment sector. And so what we're going to be doing is we'll be producing a publication piece to highlight innovative SMEs who are rising to the challenge of COVID-19. At the moment, we are open for expression of interest for SMEs to be considered as part of this campaign. If you want to, if that's you, then do ping me an email outlining what your business does, and we'll then be doing our selection process. We do have a cut-off date for that. It's on the 30th of June, but sooner the better, as we're planning to publish by July. So please email me. And also we've got, we are open for applications for our HS2 accelerator program. So any small medium enterprises who want to apply, please go on our Catapult